Elon Musk has opinions about a Christopher Nolan casting choice, and Wicked's promotional tour might have caused more harm than good. Let's get into this week in film. First, I want to send my condolences to the family of Catherine O'Hara, who passed away this week. Catherine O'Hara is an actress, a screenwriter. She was a comedian whose career expanded for about 50 years, and she's famously known for being the mother, Kate McAllister, on Home Alone 1 and 2. Some of you may also know her for Schitt's Creek as well, and a new series called The Studio, which I think came out last year. I just want to say that Catherine was a wonderful actress, and it's a shame when someone so well known and so prominent in the industry does pass away. So wanted to start off with that. Now, as for Elon, he's come out to criticize Christopher Nolan because he feels like Christopher has lost his integrity in his casting choice. This has stemmed from the recent news that Lupita Nyong'o is going to play Helen of Troy in the upcoming The Odyssey that's coming out in July, which is Christopher Nolan's next big movie and blockbuster. Elon always has something to say. We hear him all the time. Some things not great, some things even more not great. But this conversation of, Helen of Troy, I think there's been some mixed reviews from the audience in terms of whether they agree with Elon or whether they don't. And I think where this comes from is that Helen of Troy, traditionally in media, is played by someone who's white, fair skinned and blonde. So having someone like Lupita, with her phenotype, beautiful woman, play someone like Helen of Troy, people think, no, we're used to what we're used to seeing. Why is this? Why are you now changing this? And ultimately, this conversation stems from ongoing conversations of diversity and called quote unquote wokeism. I hate that word. I hate how it's been used. I hate how it's changed over time. I don't even use it myself. But this is something that's been in conversation for quite a while now, and people are frustrated over the idea of like things being like people's ethnicity and genders being switched out, and they just want to keep things the same thing. And although not everything needs to be swapped and changed, I do agree that sometimes, when they try to readapt a movie and make the male character now a female or vice versa, or they just try to swap out everyone's race and ethnicity and just kind of make it upside down just for the sake of creating another version of the same thing but with a different face. Although I agree that doesn't always need to happen and it's just unnecessary, I just feel indifferent to this casting choice. Essentially, I think Lupita is an amazing actress and I think she's going to do an absolute fantastic job, but I might be slightly biased in my view, in that I'm indifferent because personally I'm not emotionally tied to Helen of Troy or who she is, or who she's supposed to be. Of course, I've heard of her. I know that the idea that in Greek mythology and that kind of Greek mythology, it's she's obviously a very, very prominent figure, but at the end of the day, she's a mythical made up character, so technically anybody can play that character. The only counteracting point I have when it comes to mythical characters and what they look like and who should play them is when the phenotype of the character is integral to the storyline and integral to the character that they're supposed to be representing. I think a good example of this is probably Black Panther. Now, Black Panther is set in the Kingdom of Wakanda, which is obviously a mythical country, but that country of Wakanda is supposed to be set in East Africa. Now, typically, you would expect then somewhere that's set in East Africa is going to have mainly the casting and the lead superhero, Black Panther, be someone who's going to be played by a black person. That makes sense because it is integral to the location it's set and it's integral to the storyline itself. That's when I think, okay, you can't really swap out a black person for someone who's non-black to play someone who's Black Panther, because it just kind of defeats who Black Panther is supposed to be, and especially where he's from. So that kind of example I would I would say, is where it's important, where a mythical character has to be a certain look. However, if the race of the person, the character, and where they're from, if it's not integral to the storyline, it's not relevant to who they are as a person, then it shouldn't really matter too much who plays them. And that's how I feel about that. Let me know what you think about certain casting choices and who plays what, and you might have slightly stronger views, and I would absolutely love to hear it in the comments. Let me know what you think of Elon's point of view as well. You might agree with him, you might disagree. Let me know. Oscar nominations. Recently, the Oscar nominations were announced, and while the expected were mentioned, One Battle After Another, Marty Supreme, Sinners, there was one movie that didn't really make the cut, and that happens to be Wicked for Good. Now, an anonymous voter came out and said the movie wasn't that great. The two have an amazing on-screen chemistry, but spent most of the film apart. But that wasn't really the controversy of the comment. They then came out to say further that I was also just completely turned off by their promotional performances. They creeped a lot of people out, and in their rush to feel authentic, came off as cosplaying. And what's even worse is that another voter claimed that the two actresses sucked the air out of any red carpet they were on, and no one wanted to go through that again. Now, the two actresses obviously in question are Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande. And I just really take issue to those comments. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that as actresses, you are ruining their chances of getting an Oscar just because you were comfortable with how they were promoting the movie and their friendship. Now, granted, it did take up a lot of the news, and people were commenting on their mannerisms and their behavior, and how they came off in interviews, and it became viral, memeable moments. But in my opinion, that should have nothing to do with whether they get an Oscar or not. You should be voting based on their acting. You should be voting based on the characters they were representing. How do they compare to other actors in the same category? Even just for the nomination itself, I think they deserved it, not just because I enjoyed it. When I watched the first one, actually, I didn't get to watch the second one. But speaking about just the film Wicked in general, I don't think any actor should be judged based on what they do outside of the film. Of course, obviously, if it's a heinous crime that they did, then they shouldn't be awarded in any kind of respect. But just simply on having a very close friendship with each other, and yes, it might have made some people feel uncomfortable, but it's not like they kind of committed any crimes, and I think it's there's a lot of underlying issues that causes, really. It's like sending a message to other actors that, oh, can we maybe not show a bit of personality in our promotional tour because that might ruin our chances of getting an Oscar. Honestly, I really completely disagree, and I was just really kind of shocked by that, really shocked by the reasoning, and they would come out to say that. I don't know if it's something that was shared by all the rest of the voters, but the fact that two different anonymous voters came forward to say, oh, their behavior creeped us out, and it was just all very performative. And I'm thinking, can you judge based on what you saw in the movie? That's what you're supposed to be voting on. And honestly, I just think there's a problem with how some of these films get voted on anyway. But yeah, I don't think that was fair at all. I don't think that was fair on Cynthia or Ariana. I think they worked so hard on this film, and I've seen some behind the scenes footage and the work they've put into their characters and all the songs and all the training, and just to miss out on an Oscar nomination because some voters didn't like how they promoted the movie. I just think it's just really disgusting, to be honest, and it's just really an offense to the art and how much hard work they put into it. So yeah, I think they should have just kept that to themselves, honestly. I think we're better off not knowing, because if that's what can miss your chance of getting an Oscar, then I don't know if we should really take the Oscar seriously. Our story is that Sherlock Holmes 3 is back in development. This film stars Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law, and I believe that the last installment came out in 2011. So over the years, this film, I believe, has had a lot of stops and starts, and oh, it's back in production, oh, now that's been put on hold, that kind of thing. And lately, they've come out to say that it's back in development. So we'll see how quickly that gets produced and when that comes out, but how exciting. So that's all I've got for you for this week in film. Please comment below any of your thoughts and opinions on any of the topics I discussed. Please subscribe to my channel. I would love to just build a community of those who love film and love talking about film, and like the video if you got this far. Thank you, and I'll speak to you soon.